So if you want to grow a big bulb onion and you want to set yourself up for the best chance of success, the most important thing to know is that bulbing of the onion is triggered by day length. So not choosing the correct type of onion is the number one reason most people don't have success with growing onions. That's why you grow them and they're the size of a golf ball and they never get any bigger. Hi friends, I am down in my seed room. I'm so excited because today marks about 9 weeks before my average last frost date and I am gonna start my onions. They have become one of my favorite crops to grow. I grew them for the very first time last year, made a few mistakes, learned from it, but I am very excited to grow these 3 different varieties this year. So I thought I'd walk you through some basic key growing information about how to grow onions, the different ways that you can start your onions, some specifics about the varieties that I've chosen to grow, and then show you the process of starting my seeds. So let's go. So there are 3 different day length types of onions. There's short day, intermediate day, and long day onions. So those that geographically are at a lower latitude, like your southern United States, will grow a short day onion. The more north you are in the northern parts of the United States with a higher latitude will grow a long day onion, and those of us that fall in the middle will grow an intermediate day onion. I'm in Central Virginia and I grow intermediate day. There's also a few long day onions that have a little bit of overlap to where I am that I could get away with growing. But I cannot stress enough that if you want to be successful in growing onions, you have to pick the correct variety. Long day, short day, or intermediate day. You can Google it. There's tons of maps out there to find your geographical location and what type of onion you should grow. You will have much more success if you make sure the variety that you choose falls within your day length category. So after you've picked the variety of onion that you want to grow, the next thing to know is how to start your onions. There are 3 basic ways to start your onions. Start them from seed yourself, buy them from a nursery or garden center where they started them from seed and you're just growing them on, or from an onion set. So an onion set is basically a small onion bulb, similar to how you start garlic. The thing to know about growing onions from sets, and I really discourage anyone who wants to have success with growing onions to grow them from sets, is to know that onions are biennial. So that means that they flower and go to seed on their second year. So that first year, that onion set that you purchase was grown and put in storage until you purchased it. So it's already going, even though it's small, when you plant it in the ground, it's thinking that its job that year is to flower, and it's going to put all of its energy into flowering and going to seed, and it's not going to produce one of those big bulb onions that you're desiring. That's why we're growing onions. I highly discourage anyone from growing onions from sets. You will just get frustrated at the size of your onions, and the variety of onions available in sets also is really poor. Typically, they're the onions that you find at your big box stores, and they'll just be a little bag that says red onion, yellow onion, white onion. You have no idea what type of onion it is. It might not even be the correct day length onion for your area. So there's a lot of potential for waste of your time and energy and money in growing an onion from sets. So highly recommend either purchasing seeds that were grown from your garden nursery center that spring, or starting your own seeds. Onions are really easy to start from seeds, so I have a tendency to suggest that, but if you don't have the setup to grow your own seeds, then purchase them from a garden center. So we have our onions grown from seed or purchased from a container. What do we do next? So you want to choose a spot that's in full sun, and onions typically really like a very fertile, kind of sandy, loamy soil that's well draining. So pick a good spot. I grow mine in raised beds. That's a great way to control the soil. Then the other thing to know is that you want to fertilize them with a very nitrogen-rich fertilizer. They're heavy feeders. Nitrogen will promote the upward green growth, which is actually, it kind of feels like not what you want, but it is what you want, because the more green growth you have, the more energy that it's taking in to develop a bigger bulb. Blood meal makes a great fertilizer for onions. It's heavy in nitrogen. So you want to plant your onions about 4 inches apart. Anything less than 4 inches is just going to make your onions, the bulbs, compete for space, and they're not going to be able to grow as large. Anything in beyond 4 to 5 inches is just a waste of space, and we don't want to waste our garden space so that we can plant more things. So I recommend that 4 to 5 inches, really 4 inches apart. It's also recommended to then space your rows about 12 to 18 inches apart. I cheat on that, as I do a lot of things in gardening and plant things a little bit closer. My rows are about 10 to 12 inches apart. So 4 inches definitely between plants so that you can get a large bulb, but your rows can be a little bit closer, maybe 10 to 12 inches. So a secret to growing bigger onions that I just recently learned about that I'm gonna try this year is to top your onions as they're growing. So we are fertilizing our onions. They're putting on a lot of long, thick, leafy growth. Well, that leafy growth can get heavy. And if it prematurely flops, it will signal to your onion that it doesn't need to grow anymore. The bulb won't put on any more size, even if it's not time to harvest. So to prevent that from happening, you just go in periodically and cut the tops of your leaves off. You don't want to cut it too close to the onion, so you want to leave like 12 to 15 inches of growth, but you'll kind of be able to tell, like an individual leaf at the top will get weak and start to flop over, and that's an indication where the weight is heavy, and just cut there. And if you do this periodically, you'll relieve a lot of that weight and your onions won't flop prematurely and you'll get a bigger onion. I'm excited to try it. Have you ever tried it? I'm growing 3 different varieties of onions this year, 2 of which are new to me. The one I grew last year is the candy onion. This is a yellow intermediate date onion. It's very sweet and delicious, but because of its high sugar content, it has a shorter shelf life of about 1 to 3 months, and it produces about a large size onion bulb. The one that is new to me, the yellow onion, is the Calibra. So this is a yellow intermediate date onion, and it has a very long shelf life of about 6 months. I'm excited to try this one because it says it can produce like jumbo to colossal size bulbs. So we'll see. And then lastly, I am growing a red intermediate date onion, the Monastrell onion. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, but this one also produces large to jumbo size onions. It has a storage life of like 3 to 5 months. And one of the cool things about this one is that it has a long harvest window. So once they're ready to be picked or harvested, if you don't get around to harvesting them right away, you can leave them in the ground for a few days and they'll be fine. So it's time to start my seeds. What you need is some sort of seed tray to start your seeds in, or whatever you plan to start them in. If you're recycling like a berry container or a tray, you'll need your soil, which I choose to do a potting soil versus a seed starting mix. The reason for that is seed starting mix doesn't have any nutrients in it. While it's nice and soft and lofty for root development, potting mix at least has a little bit of nutrients to feed the plant, so you don't have to fertilize as soon and as often. It's just kind of like a little extra like insurance. So I have my potting mix, my garden marker, and my plant tags, and I'm going to pre-moisten my soil. And with this tray, these are about 1.5 by 1.5 inches, and because they're a little bigger, I'll probably put like 6 to 8 seeds in each cell. And with onions, you can heavily sow them and pack them in there because they are really easy to separate when you plant them out. You can just kind of lightly tease them apart, or if the roots are a little intertwined, you can kind of submerge them in water to get the soil off and then tease the bulbs apart. One way to save on space is just to sow multiple seeds in one cell. So I'm gonna get going on that and I'll walk you through all my steps. All right, so first up, I am going to moisten my soil, pre-moisten it. That way when I pack my seed or put my seeds in the cells, they don't, and water them, they don't just disperse everywhere. All right, see, you want the consistency to be wet, moist, but not so wet that it's dripping soil or dripping water from the soil. Just mix this together. So I am gonna fill my tray, all my cells, about 1/4 inch from the top. Onion seeds you wanna plant 1/4 inch deep, so I will leave 1/4 inch space, top it with some more soil, and then on top of that, I sprinkle a little vermiculite. And the reason for the vermiculite is it helps with moisture control, prevents any like mold, algae growth, and it's really good for people who have a tendency to overwater like me. So I'm gonna top it with a vermiculite, and I'll walk you through that as well. Let's just pack our tray. So one thing I see a lot of people do is they'll come in here and like really pack down the soil, and you don't want to do that because you're compacting it too much. You do want to get the majority of the air out, but you don't want to make it hard compacted soil for your seedlings. So just like a very light pressure to kind of tamp it down. All right, I have my trays filled. I'm gonna go ahead and make my labels before I forget. Labels, and now I'm ready to put my seeds in. I think I'm going to do 3 rows of the candy, 3 rows of the Calibra, and then 4 rows of the Monastrell. And like I said, you can seed these with definitely more than one seed in a cell. For this size, like I said, I'm going to try and go for like 6 to 8. Right, these are the candy onion seeds, like little black, almost look like little black rocks. I'm just going to cover the tops lightly with a little bit more soil. So the last thing I'm going to do is sprinkle a little vermiculite on top. Don't need a lot. And like I said, this is not a necessary step. It's just something that I'm doing to help with moisture control. It's optional. So before I cover these and put them under the grow lights, I am just gonna mist the top of the soil just ever so slightly. Don't wanna saturate them, but I just wanna make sure that they're moist and settled in. All right. One thing I forgot to mention that you need is some sort of cover, humidity dome or a cover for these. I'm using plastic wrap because I don't have humidity domes for this size tray. So plastic wrap, cling wrap, whatever works really well. Just want to cover all the cells, and that is going to help keep moisture in until the seeds germinate. Once you get about 75 to 90% of your seeds germinated, remove the cover. It's very important, and that will help prevent any mold, mildew growth, or dampening off. So these are going to go under the grow lights. I'm not going to put them on a heat mat. I do have some heat mats for my seeds. Onions don't require it. It would speed up the germination, but I don't really need to speed the germination up, and I want to save my heat mat for something else. So I'm just going to pop this tray under the grow lights. I put them in a tray to catch any water when I water them. You can also bottom water. A lot of people prefer to bottom water because that helps prevent displacing your seeds. So that's always an option. You can see they're really close. I have my lights down low. They're just a couple inches away from the seedlings, And as the onions start to grow, I can raise my lights up higher. I'm really excited. It's a lot of onions. We eat a lot of onions. We're a family of 5, but probably a little bit more than what we need. So I'll share some of my seedlings with friends and family if we get a good germination rate. Follow along and see us as we totally renovate this property on the outside and make it our idea of beautiful. Please follow. It really helps my channel grow, and you'll get to see as we make progress on this property. It's going to be in real time with a real budget, but we have big dreams for this property and a lot of projects planned for this year. I really appreciate you watching, and thanks for gardening with me.